What's the hubbub? Spider-Man, Brand New Day is overrated and the Zack SnyderVerse hypocrisy is showing. In this edition, we're talking about Spider-Man, Brand New Day, and yes, I'm going there if I hadn't said it loudly enough. It's vastly overrated. I really wanted this movie to work. I'm a Marvel fan, I'm a Spider-Man fan, I love Tom Holland in the role, and I genuinely wanted Brand New Day to be the movie that helped bring the superhero genre roaring back. Instead, I walked out thinking, that's it? It's not a terrible movie, there are some genuinely great moments here. But for me, it's massively overrated. And we're also going to talk about the AI concept art controversy, the strange double standard I'm seeing from some Snyderverse-only fans, and why Thunderbolts actually handles many of the same ideas better. Then we'll finish up with some DCU news, including Booster Gold and some very interesting word-of-mouth surrounding lanterns. So let's get into it. Let's start with something that has absolutely nothing to do with the quality of Brand New Day itself, the AI controversy. Marvel's recently released Art of Spider-Man Brand New Day book includes concept artwork for the movie, including a piece called Big City Little Spider by Scott McInnes. Fans have pointed out what they believe are telltale signs of generative AI in the image, distorted architecture, strange details, and other visual oddities. In other words, the internet did what the internet does best, zoomed in 800% and became CSI Photoshop. Now this is where things get interesting, because we've just seen a very similar controversy involving DC's Supergirl. A behind-the-scenes featurette showed director Craig Gillespie and Jason Momoa looking at what appeared to be AI-generated concept imagery for Lobo. The footage was subsequently removed from Warner Bros.' official YouTube channel after backlash. And here's my problem. If you're one of those Snyderverse-only fans known as Snyder Bros who want Zack Snyder in charge of DC and who spent days screaming about Lobo and AI because James Gunn is involved, now where are you when Spider-Man has a similar controversy? Come on. Nobody should automatically be outraged by AI being used as a development tool for concept exploration. If it's being used to throw ideas around during pre-production and the final movie isn't using AI-generated artwork as the finished product, that's different from replacing human artists throughout the actual creative process. You can absolutely debate the ethics of that. But let's at least apply the same standard to Marvel and DC. Don't suddenly become pro-AI because the Spider-Man logo is on the poster. And don't suddenly become anti-AI because James Gunn's name is somewhere within a 5-mile radius of the project. Pick a lane, people. My Spider-Man problem. Now let's talk about the actual movie. One thing I realized while putting this review together is that some of my problems with Brand New Day actually go beyond this movie. They go back to the way the MCU has constructed Tom Holland's Spider-Man. I love Holland as Peter Parker. I think he's excellent. But the MCU version has gradually moved away from some of the classic elements that make Peter Parker feel like Peter Parker. Where's the photographer? Peter Parker being a photographer, whether working for the Daily Bugle or freelancing for J. Jonah Jameson is one of the character's classic traits. The MCU instead emphasized Peter's scientific ability, engineering skills, and high-tech gadgets. And I understand why. Marvel didn't want to repeat the same origin story we'd already seen twice, so Uncle Ben was largely skipped, with Aunt May eventually delivering the great responsibility lesson in No Way Home. That's perfectly defensible. But when you remove Uncle Ben, the Daily Bugle photographer, and other classic elements, eventually you have to ask, how much can you change before you're basically making a new character with Peter Parker's name? And then there's MJ. I love Zendaya, but the MCU made her Michelle Jones Watson rather than simply using Mary Jane Watson. Again, I'm fine with reinventing the character. But sometimes Marvel seems so terrified of repeating something that it forgets some things are core elements because they're good. You don't always have to reinvent the wheel. Sometimes the wheel was working. Now let's dig deeper into my Brand New Day review. Despite all of that, I went into this movie wanting to love it. I wanted Brand New Day to be the superhero comeback, because yes, it'll make money. Spider-Man could probably sell tickets to a 2-hour movie of Tom Holland explaining beer pong rules, but financial success isn't the same thing as reigniting audience excitement for the genre, and unfortunately, this movie didn't do that for me. My biggest problem is that so much of Brand New Day feels like something I've already seen done better. The movie deals heavily with trauma, damaged characters, emotional pain, and people confronting the darkness inside themselves. And immediately I thought, Thunderbolts. That movie already explored many of these ideas with much more confidence and emotional depth. Brand New Day isn't copying it scene for scene, but the thematic overlap is obvious. The difference is that Thunderbolts made those themes feel like the foundation of the movie, Here, they sometimes feel like ingredients thrown into a Spider-Man crossover blender, and that's the problem with this entire movie. There are too many ingredients: Scorpion, Tombstone, Boomerang, Tarantula, Ramrod, The Hand, Damage Control, Punisher, Hulk, Jean Grey, Yelena, and Spider-Man. At some point, I'm not watching a Spider-Man movie, I'm watching Marvel's LinkedIn page. Most of these characters barely get enough screen time to justify being in the movie. Tombstone shows up and basically says, "Hello, I am Tombstone," then he's gone. Boomerang and Tarantula? Blink and you'll miss them. Ramrod? Congratulations if you remembered he was there. Scorpion gets more to do, but even he doesn't become the major Spider-Man villain I wanted, and that leads to one of my biggest problems. Where is a great Spider-Man villain? Spider-Man has one of the greatest rogues galleries in comic book history, Green Goblin. Doc Ock, most notably in the Sam Raimi Spider-Man 2 movie, which is one of my all-time favorites in the superhero genre. Venom, who I don't think has been nailed yet in other film iterations. The Lizard. Kingpin crossing over as well could work. There are villains who can walk into a Spider-Man movie and immediately give the story an identity. Brand New Day doesn't really have that. Instead, the movie spends so much time establishing characters, crossover elements, and future MCU possibilities that its central threat never feels as iconic as it should. And that's frustrating because the movie actually has some interesting ideas. The retread, particularly the body-hopping element, reminded me of the 1998 Denzel Washington movie Fallen. That movie used the idea of an evil entity moving between bodies to create paranoia and suspense. Brand New Day uses a similar mechanism, but I never felt that same sense of dread.
I do know who you are. Azazel.
Where'd you get that? From Milano's place?
Instead, I kept thinking, I've seen this before, and ironically, the movie itself is called Brand New Day. That's a little awkward, and this is where the movie really started losing me. The retread initially feels like it might be this huge supernatural threat.
Beware my wrath.
But then we learn there's considerably more going on with Jean Grey and the circumstances surrounding her, and I actually like the idea. Sadie Sink does a good job, and the Jean Grey reveal has enormous potential, but the movie doesn't let the reveal breathe. It's almost like Marvel goes, here's a gigantic reveal about the future of the MCU, and then immediately. Anyway, moving on. It feels like a post-credit scene accidentally wandered into the middle of the movie. And speaking of post-credit scenes, don't even bother. Throw your trash away, find the bathroom, take a piss. You'll have more satisfying character development in there. The Punisher? Yes, this character development problem is a real issue. Frank Castle nerfed? I like John Bernthal as the Punisher a lot. But this version didn't always work for me. The problem isn't that Punisher can't have so much humor. The problem is when the jokes undercut the intimidating presence of the character. Some moments feel like Frank Castle is less, I am the Punisher, and more, hey guys, remember when I was the Punisher? And then there's the shooting incident that becomes a major part of the story. For me, it never quite lands with the weight the movie thinks it does. And this brings me back to the Lobo comparison. Some people criticized Supergirl for using Lobo as fan service, but if you're perfectly fine with Brand New Day bringing in Punisher, Hulk, Yelena, and her big versus small potatoes, and a bunch of other characters, while simultaneously complaining about DC using a popular character, maybe check your bias. And that's okay, we all have biases, just don't call yours objective criticism while everyone else's is agenda. A real agenda is the anti-woke influencers like Critical Drinker and Nerdrotic primarily. They want to judge movies before they are out and suppress turnout based on being woke, which they can't legitimately claim, as again, they haven't seen it yet. So what actually works in Brand New Day? Now, I'm not going to sit here and pretend this movie is garbage, because there are things I absolutely loved. Tom Holland is fantastic. He's done the most Spider-Man movies and is well cast to carry the webbed mantle. He sells Peter's loneliness, frustration, and emotional exhaustion, and the action is excellent. In fact, one of the best moments in the entire movie is when Peter finally stops holding back. That's Spider-Man. That's the stuff I've been waiting to see. You get a real sense of how powerful Peter actually is when he cuts loose, and the choreography is brutal, energetic, and visually impressive. For a few minutes, the movie reminds you exactly why Tom Holland is such a great Spider-Man, and that's almost what makes the rest more frustrating. Because the movie clearly has the ability to be great, it just doesn't stay there. The ending is another major problem for me. The movie seems to want this gritty, morally complicated tone. But instead of ending with something emotionally devastating, It sometimes slips into cheesy superhero dialogue. There are moments where I could almost hear the studio executive saying, "Okay, that's the emotional scene, now make sure we get the Avengers set up." And that's what I kept feeling throughout the movie. Every time the story started getting personal, the MCU machine would suddenly kick the door open. This movie needed to trust Spider-Man more. You don't need to remind us every 5 minutes that this character exists inside a massive universe. We know, he's Spider-Man, he can carry his own movie, and that's why I keep coming back to Thunderbolts. It is a better movie. Both films deal with damaged people trying to move forward. Both deal with trauma. Both deal with darkness coming from within. But Thunderbolts commits to those themes. Its characters feel like damaged people first, and superheroes second. Brand New Day occasionally feels like it's trying to do that, while also remembering it has to introduce 6 characters, establish 3 future plotlines, and remind you that Avengers Doomsday exists. That's not necessarily bad filmmaking. Ultimately, my disappointment isn't that Spider-Man Brand New Day is horrible, it's that it had potential to be much better. So my Hubbub score for Spider-Man Brand New Day is 67%, and I'm not saying that for rage bait. The algorithm already had its share of Spider-Man reviews, but I'm not going cookie cutter here. I'm not chasing clicks, I'm expanding my thoughts. I love Spider-Man. I love Marvel. I want Marvel to succeed. It helps the genre, which helps the DCU. I hope the Avengers movies remember that villains matter just as much as heroes. Now let's move over to the DCU. First up, let's cover Booster Gold again. As a reminder, it's not dead like the Snyderverse, it's in development, actual development. There were rumors that the project was dead after Our Flag Means Death creator David Jenkins announced that his version of the series wasn't moving forward. But the important distinction is that his version isn't moving forward, the series itself is. The Wrap reports that Booster Gold is being revamped with a new creative team and an actor has not officially been cast. So don't bury Booster Gold just yet. He's just getting a creative team makeover. And there are already rumors floating around about potential casting. One name I've heard discussed is Sean Sipos, who has a DC connection from Krypton, where he played Adam Strange. Personally, my top 2 choices would still be Glenn Powell or Chris Pratt. Is Pratt obvious? Absolutely. But sometimes the obvious choice is obvious because it makes sense. And finally, Lanterns. Grace Randolph, who has been critical of James Gunn and aspects of the DCU, recently offered some extremely positive word of mouth about the series.
I really want to give the writing a shout out because I think it's exceptional. I think it's exceptional from a business standpoint and a creative standpoint. On the business side, there are some fun Green Lantern and even some DC Easter eggs. Not enough to overwhelm the show, and to pull direction and focus away, but enough to make you feel like there is a larger universe beyond this show.
Because Lanterns has the potential to establish something really important for this universe. It's not just another superhero show. It's an opportunity to prove that the DCU can build a compelling mystery, develop its characters, and establish its larger universe without constantly screaming, "Hey, look, this is part of the universe." And with Jon Stewart set to appear in Man of Tomorrow, a great Lanterns series could be an excellent foundation for where DC is heading next. So maybe we're finally starting to turn a corner. Maybe. I'm cautiously optimistic, which, for a comic book fan, is basically the emotional equivalent of putting your hand near a toaster and hoping for the best. So that's my take on Spider-Man Brand New Day and the latest Marvel and DC news. Did I go too hard on Spider-Man? Did I completely miss the point? Do you think Brand New Day is better than Thunderbolts? And if you're a Snyderverse fan, be honest. Would you be this forgiving about the AI controversy if Zack Snyder were the person on the other side of it? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoy smaller YouTube communities where we can actually talk about movies instead of just feeding the algorithm, hit that subscribe button. Thanks for watching. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and I'll see you in the next one. Like, subscribe, comment, and share on your favorite social media go-to platforms and sites.